This is a clip from an earlier live stream. I know you're going to like it, so the link to the full video is down below. Check it out. I'll see you over there.
This whole situation around Charlie Kirk hits home for a lot of not just Utahns, but members of the church. I mean, Brandon himself.
Okay, real quick. I'm going to jump in because I know where he's going to go to. Real quick. Mormons are not Christians. I'm going to just say that. They might very well allude and say that they are, but they're not. They're not Christians. I'm sorry. There's no way. We're not going to argue in the comment section. You can email management, dearwokec@gmail.com. Mormons are not Christians. Seventh-day Adventists are not Christians. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not Christian, period. There you go. We're going to go ahead and get that off the table so we don't have to argue about that in the comments. All right. Now, again, you can email management, dearwokec@gmail.com, and we can have that conversation. You'll still be wrong, though, because Mormons are not Christians. But we don't have to argue about that in the comment section. So they are going to attest that they are wrong. Okay. So we don't have to pretend. I'm not pretending it. I'm gonna say it again. Mormons are not Christians. So we already covered that. Jason's already said it. We good to go. So now I don't want us to have to fight in the comment section. However, I do want to allow them to just go ahead and tease it out. Maybe when I do the edit, maybe I'll chop that part, what they're saying, out, because I don't want to confuse people later on. But I just want to make sure, again, they're not Christian. No, they're not. Mormons are not Christian. They can be good people. They can be conservative. They can believe in one man, one woman. They can believe in, the sanctity of life. They can believe in no drugs. They can believe in paying their taxes, keeping their yards properly manicured. Those things are great. Those are wonderful things. That does not mean they're Christian. That's what I'm saying. Okay, let us bring this back in, and with no further ado.
He was there that day, front row at the event, and in that, in regards to the specific allegations she made towards you, being that I had no interaction with you prior to that video, I said, Tyler Bowyer, I don't know who he is. For all I know, he could be a shady character. And I kind of just left it at that and more focused on her comments. But then after that, we got reached out to by a couple family members of yours that watched the channel, and we got connected that way. And then as recently as last week, in 3 of the 4 of Candace's live streams, she highlights your name specifically and says things like Tyler Bowyer is a bad dude and needs to be investigated further. And so we're like, we want to give you the opportunity to kind of share your side of the story, react to some of these allegations that have been thrown at you, because correct me if I'm wrong, this is maybe kind of the first platform that you've come on to head on address some of these things that have been thrown at you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, no, look, I appreciate it. We go way back with Candace and so many others. Actually what was kind of neglected was kind of in the very beginning of Candace's tenure within the conservative movement, and we had hired her. I was the one that was the CEO of Turning Point that sent her offer and spent so much time with her. And, Charlie and I have always been in the same camp where we've had nothing negative to say about anyone that's a former, current, an important figure within the movement. And so, it's obviously been, I think, shocking to hear, people come out so negatively about you, to the point of making things up or spreading, completely manufactured or false elements that you had, really such a normal, working relationship with for many, many years. So yeah, it's been kind of shocking and surprising along the way. Obviously, it's kind of spurred a bunch of people on the internet to be, I think, extremely and vehemently, to a certain extent, angry and kind of nasty to people. I don't think any of us expected that, but here we are.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that you've come on and you've decided to kind of head on it, tell your side of the story on some of these things. I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of help the audience understand what your intentions are, motivations for coming on, and especially to, this show, Latter Daily Saints, to kind of talk about some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm totally open to open dialogue, like you said. A member of the church, served a mission. My family, I'm pioneer heritage, so mentioned 7th generation Arizona because my family was sent down by Brigham Young, to help found really what became Arizona. And so it's been, it's I think a lot of people appreciate the content that you put out. And
Do they
there's
have
so many
bees,
others
though?
that, there's things that happen in society, and obviously the assassination of one of my closest friends ever, my business partner, confidant, how that's impacting Utah for the next number of years, maybe for the rest of our lives, how it changes, the dynamics politically, how that changes the dynamics culturally, is super important to our community. And so, I recognize that we're part of that, and I myself, as being part of, the LDS community, to a certain extent, is an important part to have that conversation, open that dialogue. So I think this is really the beginning of kind of a long, arduous, unfortunate situation where the entire world's going to be looking at Utah around this trial and everything else. And so we really can't just ignore when people say, outlandish things that attack our community. And I don't think that should be okay by anyone. And that starts with, I think, again, you guys who are leaders and discussing these issues, these cultural issues, and then obviously us from our perspective of defending our people, as they're kind of being poorly talked about, whether that's a turning point for me or, within the LDS community, because we have such great people in the LDS community, and then particularly in Utah, that have been so good to us and to so many others in the midst of this horrific situation.
Yeah. Well, dude, appreciate you coming on, and just I guess to get into it, Candace, she's explained from the beginning that one of her motivations in diving so deeply on this is because she personally doesn't trust the FBI narrative that's currently out there, that Tyler Robinson was a lone conspirator, that it was, motivated by leftist ideologies and stuff, and that he used the Mauser 30-06 and acted alone and stuff like that. And so I'm curious, not just from the turning point standard, but from you, do you feel that the current narrative of what the Federal Bureau of Investigation has come out with, do you feel confident that they're on the right track with that?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that this is a state level investigation. So local authorities are the ones that are running point on this murder investigation. And so I want to first start off by saying that anything that I've seen where people are, trying to ignite, I think, the internet to be upset about how this is going, quote unquote, I'll use air quotes, how this is going.
Yeah.
It are people who are, questioning usually the federal government, which, again, I totally empathize with. We at Turning Point, we run an organization where we say, hey, the government is questionable. There's a lot of things that are not to be trusted. And, coming out of 4 years of Joe Biden, it's understandable why a lot of people would question the intelligence agencies. Kind of where my headspace is, there is an investigation under that's being carried out right now. There's a ton of evidence that, again, one of my good friends, Jack Posobiec, has pointed to pretty religiously that shows the involvement of Tyler Robinson, who they apprehended. But the big question that most people have asked is said, well, where did he come from? What is his motivation and everything else? That's all part of the murder investigation. So they've laid out what is publicly accessible to everyone. And by the way, there's no difference between what I've seen and what the average citizen is seeing is, there's all of this evidence that's pointing directly and making a strong case for an individual that's been accused of murder. And we don't know all the other surrounding pieces of evidence that could come out as part of this investigation, and those are going to be relayed over the course of the next number of months ahead that best put authorities in the position to go after the proper suspects and, again, the proper motivations. And so what concerns me a little bit is that people are demanding answers to things way ahead of a complete investigation, a trial that is probably not going to occur. Many have speculated that it won't occur until early 2027. And so I think people just aren't aware of the timelines. Again, the average citizen. And so they're thinking in terms of like, well, this matters a whole lot to me because Charlie mattered to me, which I totally get that. Being one of his closest friends is like, I want this thing to be over tomorrow. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's not how murder investigations and big trials that the entire world is conscious of. That's not how these things work, unfortunately. And so, we want this to go as swiftly and as justly as humanly possible. But at the same time, you can't have the internet making demands around every bit of speculation and then expect that that's going to go well for helping. Again, you talk about narratives. I don't really care about what narratives are. I care about what truth and justice look like. Narratives can stem from law enforcement. They can stem from the defense. They can stem from the internet. They can stem from speculators. None of that is helpful to actually get into the truth. What is helpful is looking at facts, trusting that America has really what's an imperfect but the best version of a justice system in the world, and also looking at Utah and going, this is Utah's time to shine, to show that everything works the way it's supposed to in Utah. And I have full faith and confidence that that's the case.
And I realize there's an aspect here that the people that are involved, the law enforcement that are involved in this investigation, they're not hopping on a live stream every day and updating the public. Okay, this is what we found. This is where we're at. And so it does leave a big door open for people to speculate and, to try to come up with their own explanations for things. In regards to, things that have been thrown out there as evidence, for me, I have, a lot of experience with firearms and guns like that. And so with the current, I guess, murder weapon and the 30-06 that was allegedly used in the committing of the crime, have you looked much into that? Does that sit right with you? Do you know much about ballistics and guns and stuff like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I personally have some of my own thoughts around it. With all of that, what I can say is that, and I want to put this into perspective for anyone that's listening, especially in Utah. I mean, this is quite literally, and again, it pains us to talk about this, but this is one of the most photographed, most videoed murders in American history. I mean, as much. So to put that into perspective, this isn't like a situation where there were no cameras around. There were more cameras in the vicinity. There were so many individuals that were recording in real time. All of that has been compiled and utilized in the apprehension of the murder suspect. And so for people to, again, question, again, all of the details that are around the murder without really having any of that evidence at their fingertips, I think is jumping really way far ahead of what that investigation is going to lay out, if that makes sense. For me as an individual, just like everybody else that's listening to this, is that I would want to see that evidence before I come to any kind of determination around, again, the murder as a whole, the suspect, the weapon, whatever else might be there. And again, if they didn't have those things, it would make it a really easy way for the suspect to be able to get out of being that suspect, of being accused and convicted of that murder. So, so that to me is like the where my mind frame is right now is, let's see that, all of that, before we jump to any kind of conclusions about what could have or what people think should have happened, because I think a lot of that explanation will be laid out clearly by law enforcement.
Yeah. And hopefully it is. Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos made on both sides of the spectrum. There's some that say, yes, that could be the murder weapon. Others, there's like, no way. I myself, I have a difficult time with the experience that I have with firearms and stuff to believe that. But I totally understand what you're saying. I guess to kind of get more into the specific claims of Candace, on that initial episode that we did a reaction to her comments in regards to TPSA is not a Christian organization, it's a Mormon one. She made some pretty bold allegations against you, and she has repeated several times that one of the reasons that she, quote unquote, doesn't trust you, I guess, is because she labels you as this sexual deviant. And we'll just play the clip just so people have a context of, this is kind of one of the first like allegations, as far as I've been able to see, that she kind of threw out about you. So Brandon, if you want to roll that.
Also, another person who wrote us was telling me the story about Tyler Bowyer's involvement in like Maricopa County politics in general. Like, what did he do before in Arizona? And yeah, it's just the kind of stories, again, that he said he approached him several times about embezzlement. Tyler was hooking up with young male interns or young male workers. And he didn't even care. He's like, I would go on record because all of this happened. And I had the proof that all of this happened. And everybody knows about Tyler Bowyer at Turning Point USA. It's like an absurdity. But this is the person that is putting people into places of power at Turning Point USA. Also,
so she presents it as if
okay, I got to stop for a second. And I want to, before the host jumps in, because I don't want to just play it. Do you see how quickly she's like, oh, everybody just knows this? Like, that's what I'm talking about. That matter of fact, let me just throw out something bombastic. Oh, everybody knows the moon landing was fake. Everybody knows the earth is flat like a pancake. She just says something with no evidence at all. Yo, this is crazy work, man. Anyway, shout out to the best live chat. Thank y'all, everybody who's hopped in. Let's go ahead and hear what Tyler has to say about this shenanigans.
It's this foregone conclusion, like, oh yeah, everybody just knows this. And then on Twitter, I saw one time that you posted a tweet and she responded to it like, Tyler, you and your wife are swingers. And so I guess the questions that I have is, where do you think that these allegations are coming from? Have people alleged this about you before? And like, is there any truth to any of this at all?
So there is, straight off the bat,
yeah,
Candace has said this numerous times, and this has come from, and I'll kind of explain this hopefully to your audience so people understand it, that I'm gay, that I have some kind of, secret gay life that I live. This isn't unique to me. This is something that's pretty commonly said by the establishment in general that attacks political enemies pretty commonly. So just so that you guys are aware, and you wouldn't believe this, but I think the next week, right after that, or a couple weeks later, another individual came out and said that Charlie was gay or secretly gay, that other people were gay. This is like the textbook, just try to, Alinsky somebody's character with absolutely no factual basis whatsoever. And, it's actually pretty damaging what was said here, because obviously that's never happened. I'm not gay. I have 3 kids, and a wife that I've been married to for the entire time. I was married previously. My son is from a previous marriage, and so there's like this speculation. I think when when people become obsessed with you, they start asking you all sorts of questions. People make up rumors. They do really nasty stuff. And like I said, they've done that to many people, including Charlie himself. This happened to pretty frequently. And it's just not based on any kind of fact. If it was anywhere factual, those people would come forward. Trust me, the left wants me gone, wanted Charlie gone, wanted all of the things that we do and politically where we attack the left. So specifically they would use that against us. And so, it's kind of like ridiculous that, you have this person that seems to have an axe to grind, that's angry about something. I really don't totally understand it, other than just trying to take advantage of people who are in their most vulnerable state following the loss of someone that's closest to them, to go out and attack people. But you had mentioned this, is like there's this whole element that exists. I'll bring up Mikey too. Mikey was accused of being gay. There's videos that are AI that have been put out about Mikey, myself, others, and this entire world. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you just can't even really respond to it, because it's just such made up garbage and baloney. But I believe there's a real reason why people do these kind of things, and most of it is the idea is that to attack a person's character, which again, if you followed or ever read, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Saul Alinsky, but Saul Alinsky wrote a book called Rules for Radicals, and Alinskyites, they subscribe to this. And a lot of modern leftists subscribe to Alinsky rules, which you essentially utilize to attack and, you harness and close in on your enemies so that people will attack them, dismiss them, and in some cases, commit violence against them. And this is probably what terrifies me, my family, and others so much, is that when you do this and engage in this behavior, especially when it's not correct, it really puts you in the crosshairs for a lot. And I believe that that's what happened to Charlie. That's what's happened to so many others within the movement. We've seen a very violent string of attacks from people all the way from Antifa to radicalized individuals who we mentioned. The accusation is some of that had something at play here with Charlie's murder. My biggest fear is that people hear these things, they see these things, it generates obsession over particular names and characters, people who are involved, and it starts to create a characterization online that then animates people enough to want to, say awful things, but then, pick up and maybe do harmful, violent things. And so we've seen this just since this has happened. My ask is like for people to stop, because obviously it's completely untrue. I have nothing against anyone that's gay, but know lots of people who are gay and things like that, but I'm not. And so it's like we would love for that type of rhetoric to stop, because I think that there's a lot of people that we've seen online who are extremely animated about this stuff and have said things to me that are either verging on or violent in nature. And it's really unsettling to know that that's out there, especially based off of just people making these accusations that are completely unsubstantiated or untrue.
Yeah.
So
No, I understand that. And when I saw it, she said that it came from someone that reached out to their inbox and is willing to go on record because they have the proof of everything. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to make a claim and you say you have all the proof of the thing, let's see all the proof. And so,
and I can just tell you that that's just not true. And that's probably why you haven't seen that, because it's not true, obviously. So like, this is, and again, this is unfortunately how Alinsky tactics work, right? It's right. You say something and then you don't follow it up with anything. But that's not the only thing that's been said that's, harmful or untrue. I mean, there's wild accusations and, people, and again, that have been on the internet saying things that that we've engaged or I've engaged in child trafficking, for example. Wow. That there are people that they're getting my name confused with Tyler Robinson. So they see Tyler and they see Tyler. This is how low level and kind of idiotic some of this stuff is, right? So you have this baseline of just people, you brought up in that clip, it's just embezzlement. Like I've never embezzled money. Like she mentioned Maricopa County. I was the youngest chair of Maricopa County's Republican Party. I got elected, as kind of the anti-McCain candidate, and I ended up hosting Trump for what became the first ever Trump rally in Arizona. I was hated by the establishment, the very people who make things up about people that are untrue, like this claim that she mentioned. The same people that made up these claims that I have that I am gay or I embezzle money. These are all the same people who want to rid opposition within the conservative movement, specifically to the establishment. And so I'm really proud that we've built an organization that's created an alternative to the establishment. I think the establishment was on a very destructive track that was really going to damage and hurt the country long term. And so, I'm kind of hated by a lot of those people. But those are the elements that started those things. And it's really curious to see other people and the types of people who pick those things up and try to run with it, because their dream is to, again, isolate and attack their political enemies. And, I've been doing this long enough where like those things don't bother me, and they shouldn't bother others that want to get involved. But my biggest fear is that when people see these things, they go, "Oh, I never want to get involved in politics." Like if they're going to attack and make up stuff about people and, be that venomous towards people getting involved, or, even a person that's that close to somebody who just got murdered, like they'll do that to me. And I think that's a really scary thing to think about within American politics, is that people shouldn't feel that way. They shouldn't feel scared to want to speak up or get involved because they're afraid that they're going to get attacked.
Yeah. And touching on one of the things that you talked about, how in that she alleged that, you were involved in some sort of embezzling and stuff like that. In one of her streams last week, she referenced some content from a video that was made by a guy named Zach DeGregorio from Wolves in Finance, that he kind of did an expose on a company that's affiliated with Turning Point called 110 Media, that is a self-proclaimed marketing company. And that is ran by a guy, one of the senators of Arizona, Jake Hoffman, that I guess you've been affiliated with in business in the past at We the People USA. And through this company, it appears that like millions of dollars has been transferred to 110 Media from Turning Point and other like political campaigns like Carrie Lake and stuff like that. And so I'm curious, are you a partner of 110 Media, or can you help us understand what that company is that is run by Jake Hoffman?
Okay, I'm gonna stop really right there. Spoiler alert. I really want you to pay attention. I think this really helps out a lot, that we need to allow both sides to speak. Because if you've been following that, again, the Wolf of Finance guy, I don't know if he's a good guy or not. That's not my argument. But it's clear that he doesn't know a lot of the information that Tyler's about to share. And if you're just jumping in, we're watching an interview with Tyler Bowyer, who is the COO of Turning Point USA Action. And he's held a couple, he's worn a couple of hats within the company. But I think this was very helpful if you're somebody that just didn't understand, or maybe you've heard people say that, Tyler Bowyer was embezzling money, blah, blah, blah. This will help you out a whole lot. So check it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, anyone that's ever run a business, right, has marketing agencies that they work with. 110's a marketing agency that we work with that places ad buys and media buys for Turning Point. So it's not the only media firm that we work with. We work with a handful. A lot of media we do internally on our own. So we build our own teams at Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action for that. But for example, I mean, it's really it's actually a little bit concerning that anyone that would claim to be, an accounting aficionado wouldn't be able to look into the basics of, what an expense would be to a marketing agency. And again, just a pretty solid, like pretty straightforward. When you buy ads, they go in different places. So if they're billboards, you have to buy the billboard space. If it's online, digital, if it's Meta or Facebook, right, Instagram, you have to buy ads within their world on Google Ads, and then text messaging and everything else. You hire an ad agency that makes those media buys and placements. And so when people are saying, oh, millions of dollars is transferred to an agency, we bought ads through that agency. That's a pretty typical method for any organization. Obviously, we're a political organization. Our PAC, and again, for those that are listening for the first time and understanding what a political action committee is, or a 501c4 or 501c3, 501c4s and political action committees engage in sometimes direct election involvement. PACs do that basically 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the things that PACs do are advertising, placing ads. So when you see an ad on TV, for example, oftentimes it's either a campaign or it's a PAC that's putting that on. 110 has been our ad agency, above board, everything for many years. You have a handful of partners who do the ad placements. They're one of our top partners for that. And so people kind of looking at that and ignoring all the other media buys that we do, and the other, obviously, Turning Point's a behemoth. We didn't become a big brand overnight. Jake and his company are what helped build the Turning Point brand and made it kind of a national phenomenon.
Cool. And so it's an outside organization. You're not a partner on 110 Media at all. That's a separate thing.
Yeah, no, it's an ad agency.
Cool.
So, day to day on that is all run by Jake and his team that he has. Obviously, we've been close. We only trust when you're in politics too. It's, as you can imagine, there's not very many ad agencies that want to work with conservatives. Most ad agencies are pretty liberal, actually. And so you can't go out and just hire any ad agency. And in fact, even within the conservative movement, most agencies that have existed are run by consultants who make millions and millions of dollars off of ad buys. They try to put people over a barrel. I'm really proud that we've been able to work together with partners. And again, this isn't just the one agency, but we've worked with many different groups of good people who want to actually help the movement and that aren't putting people over a barrel, and they're helping actual conservatives get elected. And that's really unique. The guy you're talking about, Jake Hoffman, he's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus here in Arizona. He's helping get conservatives, the most conservative candidates elected across the state. And so whenever I see a political attack of this nature, it tells me, it's probably politically motivated in some way. I can't say this about the Wolves and Finance guy, is that he got so many things so wrong. I would be really, really concerned if I were him, because I know he's gotten at least one cease and desist with his talk about that. But unfortunately, some of these things, as far as responsiveness goes, is like you can respond to each individual direct thing in public, and then they can go out and make more content and make more money off of it and do whatever. Or what you can do is you can sit back and you can say, okay, we're noting all the things that they got wrong. And, if we have to correct these things in court after we can show damages from what they've done down the road, then, they're going to have a huge bill to pay.
Yeah.
And so, these individuals who are kind of going down the track of, really making things up and saying things like you brought up, we the people, and there's this whole conspiracy theory that exists out there because of the individuals that were on that board. That was a board that was created many years ago for a separate organization that we had actually looked to acquire here in Arizona, a thing called Constitution Week USA. So Constitution Week was being run in Gilbert, Arizona, and it was one of the largest Constitution celebrations. We had actually looked at acquiring that and helping make it bigger, make it cool, and then spread it all across the country. And so that board that they mentioned, which was just one board that was created to acquire that, it actually ended up not happening. That's why it went defunct pretty quickly, is that we didn't actually acquire that. But the whole goal was, create something to actually spread, Constitution education across the country. And again, so it's just another one of these things where it's like people, trying to villainize, really pretty basic good things that really don't have anything weird about them at all, and calling good evil, and sometimes evil good here is a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that she referenced as well is that the scenario was put forth that he referenced this lawsuit that you were involved in from 2010 to 2017 that, finished up in 2017, and there was like $11,000 in some sort of damages to be paid. And that on public record, she says that your wages were garnished. And so it paints this picture of, financial hardship. And then 4 years later in 2021, they point towards you putting a hefty down payment of $650,000 on a house. And so the picture that's being painted is, how did it go from this alleged scenario, which it shows possible financial hardship, to then having enough money to put a $650,000 deposit on a house? And so is there any light that you can shed on that? Or is that something that you're saying that he got wrong as well, or misrepresented facts?
Yeah, totally wrong. Yeah. So unfortunately, I mentioned earlier in this podcast, so I had a previous marriage, got married in 2012, and it ended pretty abruptly. Not that long after. I have a good relationship. We had a son that came out of it. He's an incredible dude, and we love him so much. But in the midst of that, we had bought a house that, it was, I don't know if you remember, but the economy was in a massive spiral during that time period. It was pretty bad. So when we had gotten our divorce, we unfortunately couldn't sell the house. The house wasn't worth what we had bought it for, and so had to let it go. And so as part of that, we also had our first property, which was a condo, and apparently what had happened, I wasn't even aware of, and this is actually kind of a cool part of the story that came out of this, is that HOAs are notorious for going after people and trying to, basically get money out of them for years and years after the fact. There apparently was a condo association fee that was not paid when that was let go. And what ended up happening was they sat on it for 10 years and charged attorney's fees for 10 years on that. So it went from being like $300 or $400 to like $10,000. And I didn't know about it until it ended up in my mailbox 10 years later, and which I paid it off right away. And was like there's nothing you could do. And so the good news is that that a law was passed in Arizona, which this was one thing that I had instigated with people, is that they can't do that to you. Basically just hide for 10 years and charge you 10 years worth of attorney's fees for some like random HOA costs that wasn't paid, because I thought it had been taken care of when we had turned the property over at the time. But unfortunately there was nothing that I could do about that. And once it came to my attention, paid it off right away. So
Interesting.
So
yeah. Cause he painted this picture. Oh, go.
Real quick, I need to clarify something, because Tyler did say something that sounded weird, and it might have been confusing. He was married to a woman. He's not gay. And he's already addressed that thing. From that marriage was a child, a little boy that they had. And the way he said it, I did hear it too. I was like, wait, what did he say? He says he's a wonderful dude and so on and so forth. He's talking about the child. And I don't know why he said it like that. It kind of got mumbled up. I know he didn't mean that, because he's talking about he was married to a woman, and from the fruit of that marriage was a little boy. And I don't know why he said that. He probably went back and listened to it too. It was like, what the heck was I talking about? So no, Tyler Bowyer is not gay. Tyler Bowyer was married to a woman. He's currently now married to a woman. They have 3 kids in total. I think he has 2 children with his new wife. He had a child with his previous wife. So that's it. If you're just jumping in to the best live chat on the internet, we're listening to an interview with Tyler Bowyer, who's, putting to rest all of the shenanigans that Candace Owens has put out, whether it be about who's running point on the case, to Tyler Bowyer being a deviant, all this kind of stuff like that. So anyway, I just want to make sure y'all had that. Anyway, let's bring it back in. Let's go.
For it.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm happy to talk about it. It's like not really a secret, but yeah, it's kind of sucked for me. Like I would have much rather, if you actually look at the filing, you can see what the original fee was that was unpaid. But this is a real problem for many people, is that HOAs can assess these fees and then go after them many, many years later. Again, like I mentioned, a law was passed that just eliminated that stopped them from able to take advantage of that. There's like kind of these like dirtbag law firms that just support HOAs to do that to people. And, our expectations that they've done that to a lot of people. It happened to me. And so again, I think we solved that problem, but it was paid off right away as soon as I was aware of it, which, I wasn't aware of it until they'd sent a letter that they were trying to garnish my wages for something I had no idea about.
Interesting. Interesting.
HOA.
Yeah. That's a completely different scenario in which is painted. So yeah,
I paid it right away. And then you brought up pay for my house. So I live in an unrenovated. Yes, it's a nice house, but it's not by any means. I think it's been demonstrated. I live in Mesa. My wife and I put down a down payment after selling our last house, and we just put all of our money from the house that we had sold prior to that. And then all of our savings into this house that we had kind of invested into. And we looked at it as an investment because it's been brought up. It's like, we made a land investment as part of like what we decided to do with our money, because at the time it was, just to kind of paint a picture, it was COVID. We had looked at building a house in Gilbert, where I'm from. And as we started down that process, lumber costs went up about 3x. And so once we started doing that, we were like, this is kind of stupid. And a lot of, advisors said that, this may not be the best use of your money, because, after COVID, lumber costs may come back down and everything else. So we decided to buy a house and invest into a little bit of land at our house. But, obviously it's been a little bit sensitive because they're putting my address everywhere, and we've got to have, uniformed police sitting outside my house because we've had crazy people, DMing and saying, pretty aggressive things where my kids live. So,
yeah. Okay. No, thank you for explaining that. And Yeah, I guess this kind of leads into, everyone saw that internal memo that was sent out by Charlie on September 2nd, talking about the new COO of Turning Point USA. Justin, and that he was instigating this initiative to do a Doge style audit to be more financially efficient and to kind of root out wasted costs and stuff like that. And a big question that I myself have had is, with that being kind of one of the last main things that it looked like Charlie was wanting to do in the company, is that something that has been carried out or is ongoing, that type of Doge style, more in-depth audit of TPUSA?
I just want to make sure this is super clear. So I was CEO of Turning Point USA up until about 3.5 years ago, when I separated my job out into about 4 different people at Turning Point USA, Justin being one of those people. And so Justin had just been made, COO about 3.5 years after I left that role, as I've been CEO at Turning Point Action since that time. So I just want to make something super clear. This is that the memo that you're talking about was intended by Charlie and Justin to be a extremely positive memo that, again, nobody had ever anticipated that Charlie would get murdered the next week. Charlie was, and again, you just mentioned something that is not true, right? It didn't say a Doge audit. That's not what it said actually on it. It said that that Charlie loved the idea of Doge because of efficiency. Not because of like, hey, we have a bunch of waste. Turning Point's never been a wasteful organization. We've never. I think if he thought that was going to go public everywhere, and would have been cast in a light, if that Charlie would have been cast in a light that he was being wasteful and that his organization was being wasteful, he'd be extremely offended by that. He would be on your podcast right now being like, you are stupid to think that I was running an organization that was wasteful and that I was trying to Doge myself. That doesn't even like add up. People I think generally understand that Charlie's a pretty smart dude. And so to, put in that light, I think it's probably the strongest mischaracterization that's the case. He was obsessed with the concept of Doge from the standpoint of efficiency. Yeah. And what you have to look at and understand about Turning Point and our entire history is that we line up with a school calendar. So our fiscal calendar lines up with a academic calendar, which ends. So our fiscal calendar ends in June, and our new fiscal calendar starts in July. So every year that I've known Charlie, first off, we hold our own internal audits every year. You have to, as an organization of our size, when you're reporting to the IRS. So every single one of the Turning Point organizations has to audit ourselves. That's not like Nancy. We have a large organization. You have to get into the weeds on everything, every individual thing. Charlie signed off on every single one of those audits every year. His interest in Doge and the concept of Doge was the efficiency part, which is that every year that we come out of those audits and everything else, that first semester, if you will, because that's how we think in Turning Point terms, because we're on a school schedule, is when we try to make things more efficient and do them better than we even did last year. That's part of what's made us dramatically more successful than every other organization within the conservative movement. And that's the time period. So you're looking at Charlie, July, August, leading into when that came out was that, hey, we're going to, buckle in and make things even better. There's some things that, need to be, that can be and need to be even better. One of those things, I'll just give an example, events costs since COVID have gone through the roof. Most of these states, Turning Point does a ton of events in different places. Those costs have been dramatically skyrocketing since COVID. Mostly a lot of event venues and different places trying to recoup money from that was lost for many years. Those are things that you have to figure out when you run an organization of our size. We have a lot of staff. We have more staff than any other singular organization. Most of the funds that get contributed to Turning Point going directly into staffing. And so figuring out how to be as efficient as we humanly can, that means for human capital, that means where do we put people? How many people do we put in those areas? How do we avoid overlap, overages? Some states have crazy wage laws. Again, California, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois are some of the worst states to operate in. And so you have to kind of figure out how to do more with less in some of those places where it just straight up costs you more to have more people in them. Those are the type of conversations that were intended by what was put out for. And again, I can't speak on behalf of Turning Point USA. I don't work for Turning Point USA. That was a Turning Point USA memo that runs all of those things. But I don't think he would ever have anticipated or intended for people to take that and go, oh, people think that we're not being efficient with our dollars. No, that's not the case. He was just so obsessed with greatness and efficiency that he always wanted to make things better.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Awesome. No, thank you for shedding more light on that, because I think that's a huge topic that is brought up over and over and over. But no, I appreciate
I'll bring but that's one thing that's it's over and over where there's and again, pockets. I've been in politics for a long time. So you watch on X and other places, pockets of obsessiveness. It's some of these things are just common sense, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's hey, if somebody is being accused of something, don't you think that there would be people speaking out about those things, right? In this case, if Charlie really intended to why would Charlie put out a message that was intended to this entire I get super offended by this, because it's people who have had no involvement maybe for many years with the organization, no close involvement, are making allusions or accusations that are really disparaging towards Charlie himself. And to me, that's what's so offensive. When people say this, they're right when they say that's attacking Charlie's legacy, because this element where it's you're trying to suggest that Charlie Kirk was not in the middle of absolutely everything. If you knew Charlie and his involvement with Turning Point, his love for this organization, I mean, it's been said in many different places as he was down in the weeds on every expense report, would make phone calls at 11, 12 o'clock at night on Sunday, going and reviewing people's expense reports, looking for inconsistencies down to our entry level staff. There was nothing that has gone on at Turning Point that Charlie himself wasn't a direct manager of. And so yeah, I think that's really important for people to understand and hear, is that I've been here for a really long time. Making accusations of financial impropriety are just so ridiculous and silly. People wouldn't be around here operating these things if that was the case. And that specific memo that was put out by Justin, who's again our CEO, who that's been with us for many, many years now. It's not like he's a brand new face. He's been here for many years. It was on our advisory council, and then, he was our chief development officer, and has been here forever. It's just genuinely silly.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for shedding light on that. And one of the things recently that she's been saying as well is one of the things that people point to show distrust in you is that you received a federal pardon from President Trump over some things that are probably still going on and being settled in the courtroom. But is there any, light that you can shed on that situation to kind of maybe dispel with some assumptions that are made from hearing, oh, he received a federal pardon, therefore guilty of XYZ?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. So so not just me, but dozens and dozens of people after the 2020 election have been isolated and attacked by leftists that support President Trump. I was an elector in the 2020 election. So I was a Republican elector for the state of Arizona. In every swing state, those of us that signed an alternate electors document, which is, again, this is covered in the law, like pretty extensively. If elections are close, you have a situation that can happen where the counting that goes on after the election, and by the way, the reason why this is an entire problem now is because the election systems have been changed in so many states where you don't find out who the winner is on election night anymore.
Mm.
It sometimes in some states takes weeks or even months to determine what are the outcomes. Well, why is that the case? Well, that wasn't because of laws that I put into place. Those are laws and rules that have been put into place mostly by the left in most states. And so what's happened is, and this is, a lot of people had a lot of concern in 2020, and I'll kind of give some color commentary to this a little bit, is that COVID happened and a lot of rules changed. And because of that, a lot of people had a ton of concern about if Joe Biden was the rightful winner in many states. And just to put this into perspective, we're talking about like a fraction of a percentage between 4 or 5 states where Joe Biden barely won.
Mm-hmm.
He won the fewest ever amount of what they call bellwether counties to become president, like the fewest ever. It's like this is just fact, like straight fact.
Mm-hmm.
And in a state like mine in Arizona, it was so close that I had pretty much everyone. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people were messaging, commenting, saying, emailing. You should have seen my email box in those weeks, which was, hey, you're a Republican elector, hold the line, to make sure that the votes get counted properly.
Mm-hmm.
I think every Republican that I've ever talked to said that's what we want is we want to see that. And so I was part of litigation to ensure that the votes got counted properly, that the proper winner of my state in Arizona got acknowledged. But it wasn't just my state; it was Wisconsin, it was Michigan, it was Nevada, it was Georgia, if you remember. And the left obviously took massive issue with that battle, and it decided to personally target all of those of us that were, again, just citizens who are asked to be electors to support the president on the Republican side, targeting us and legitimately trying to villainize and criminalize all of those of us that were engaging in a fairly normal process. That is playing out still. It's been dismissed in Georgia and Michigan. It's playing out still in Arizona and Nevada. Unfortunately, we're still 5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Each of us has spent
That's
hundreds
crazy.
and hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own money fighting a leftist attorney general who's attacking us for that. But the president had issued the statement, which was more of a statement than an official pardon, but his language was pardon for any person that had engaged in the normal civic process around the 2020 election. And my name was obviously at the top of the list because my last name is Bowyer.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier in the alphabet, so I'm higher on the list. And unfortunately, that's been characterized as if I'm like some kind of, again, I was pardoned for something, in some cases on the internet, people saying that I was involved with Charlie's murder and therefore I was being pardoned. That's obviously not true. That's not what the language at all says. It takes about 2 seconds to figure that out.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't just me. It's literally dozens, if not hundreds of other people who could potentially be attacked in the future by leftists who want to criminalize their political enemies.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the background, the basis for it. My family has has spent, basically so much time, energy, money. We've been attacked by radicals online who again have threatened me. This has kind of brought about a whole new line of people who don't seem to be totally politically aware of things, but have used that to then again make accusations that are completely false and defamatory.
Mm-hmm.
But they're using that in almost a very violent way, which is saying that we're somehow the president is involved with forgiving me for something of like some heinous crime that obviously we aren't involved with. So
mm-hmm.
It's pretty sickening to watch.
Yeah. Well, about the aftermath of, the routes that Turning Point has taken after in terms of leadership and whatnot. There's a clip that you probably have seen, but Brandon, if you want to pull it up there, of Charlie and Erica on the Charlie Kirk show, and they're kind of talking about, women pursuing careers and how to organize priorities and stuff like that. And then seeing, what has kind of happened in the aftermath of Erica taking, position as CEO. I want to roll this clip and then kind of hear your thoughts a little bit more about it.
It shows that married women with kids are the happiest. Why do you think that is? I mean, it's just nature. I mean, just becoming a CEO of a shoe company is not going to give you happiness.
Women have it so mixed up. You can have a career after children, but if you try to have a career while you have your kids, there is no such thing as balance. That is such a myth. I can't spend half of the day doing one thing. I missed out half of that time with being with the kids. So you have to choose where your heart has to be fully with the home. You have to make that decision on your own, but you can always, after your kids are in school or after they're in high school, you can always go back to work. You can always find a way to get back into the workforce. But if you miss those precious first few years, that is so hard to make up because memories are so much more important than an added paycheck. And
Pause. So after seeing that and then seeing, so quickly after Charlie's assassination, her being put into the CEO position, can you maybe shed a little light on, what went into that whole transition process? And is she, really super involved in the day-to-day? And what was the thinking behind putting her as kind of the new face of Turning Point?
Well, look, I'll just address this first by saying, Erica is one of the strongest people. I mean, anyone that's a widow, in any circumstance, the scriptures say this, I think just as normal human beings, as men in particular here, is that you should look after widows. Mm-hmm. You should be, we should be, people attacking a widow. And again, it doesn't really matter what's the level of spotlight they have. The broken heart that she has, the amount of pressure that just from losing her husband is one thing. Mm-hmm. Charlie, for better or for worse, was the person who repeatedly said, if anything ever happens to me, I'd like to see Erica kind of continue the mission. I'd like to see her do the work that I do. Why? Because, I think, obviously outside of carrying his name, and his heart and the passion that, she understood it better because she spent, outside of probably myself, Erica probably spent more time with Charlie one-on-one than any other person on this planet. And so, in the few short years that they had together as a married couple, but prior to that, they had dated extensively through that, and he trusted her fully, 100%. And so it's a hard thing to be approached by people who say, well, what's going to happen if something happens to you? Heaven forbid. I think his wish for that is kind of a blessing and a curse type of a thing, right? Which is, the blessing is that Erica is incredibly strong, incredibly capable. I think she has a lot to bring to the table that's going to be able to help young women. The thing with the negative side to this is that, she was asking for this. This isn't something that Erica, wanted to do. It's not like she was seeking it out. It's not like she was building a career to try to become CEO of Turning Point. This is something that has fallen on her shoulders that she stepped up to, very much like a calling. And that's the way that she's treating it, by the way, is very much that she's been called to do this, not that she's forced to do this, not that she wants to do this, but that she's been called to do this, to be able to carry on the legacy of her assassinated husband, mm-hmm. of the person that she cared more about than anyone else, not on just behalf of herself, but her children and, her future grandchildren and all of the people, all the donors and relationships that Charlie cared about so closely that he had built tremendous relationships with, the president's team that's depending on Turning Point. all of the individuals, the hundreds of thousands of activists and individuals who are very close to Turning Point. I mean, that is a huge amount of things to take on. And there's probably not very many people on this planet that are capable of taking that on, to be honest. And the fact is that she's taking that on in stride, and she's done an incredible job so far. But I think I would reject the premise of like, oh, well, she said these things that she believes, by the way, fully and through, because she had anticipated being put in this position. I don't think anyone wants to be in this position. I don't think she wants to be in this position. But, you know, when you're called to do something and it's presented itself, and, you know, God nudges you in a certain way, you either boldly take that on or you reject it, and you wait for what the consequences of that will be. I think I have a huge amount of respect for her. Being one of the closest people that's being able to watch all this, is that I think she's going to be uplifted and blessed in this role, where she's going to be able to carry out her caretaker duties and her motherly duties, while also being able to carry the weight of a massive organization and movement. And again, I think that she's going to be blessed for doing that. But I totally reject the idea that she wants that. I don't think anyone, any sane person would want to do that. And I don't think any sane person would want to be in this position, but you've got to be strong on behalf of the country and the movement. And she's done that. And she deserves a ton of respect. She deserves a ton of grace and love and help. And she's going to be attacked like crazy by the left and people who want to make a quick buck. You know, those are people, you know, I probably wouldn't want to ever associate with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, thanks for sharing that. I think it's great to get kind of a behind the scenes perspective on that with Erica. And in relation to this topic about Erica, I know a lot of people are wondering, just a quick question on this. There seems to be, and maybe this question will be trivial to you, but to people on the internet, it would be good to clear it up. So there seems to be a discrepancy on when Erica says you and her met, and when you say you and her met. I believe she says you met at a 2015 Trump rally, and then there was a discrepancy on when the meeting actually happened. Just if there's a short answer to that, would you mind maybe clearing it up?
It's actually really simple. Is what she said is true, and what I've said is true, is that we had met by phone prior to that 2015 Trump rally. So the background is, and this is important for people to understand, Erica was 2012 Miss Arizona. So she's part of the Miss Universe world, right? So the Miss Universe world, which was owned by Donald Trump, all of those people, and this isn't unique to Arizona, this is everywhere across the country. Those that participated with that were kind of, you know, very friendly and kind of fans of Donald Trump. So when he decided to run for president, and remember, this is June of 2015 that he announces, I think it was. And then almost immediately after that, I get a phone call in Arizona to asking if we wanted to host a fairly small anti-illegal immigration event in Arizona. And so it had wanted, this was part of the president's early strategy, that when he was then candidate Donald Trump, was to do to talk about illegal immigration as being like kind of a core piece of his thing. And so where else would you go than Arizona? So they call, what I suspect, they start working all their networks with the Miss Universe contestants and pageant winners from the past in Arizona. And many of them, it's not just Erica, but many of them, and I've known a few Miss Arizonas through, there's a lot of people that get involved with the pageant world that end up in politics and things like that. It's not unique to Erica, but she had been contacted and someone had said, hey, Tyler, who was the chairman of the Maricopa County at the time, I was, this young 20-something-year-old chair that was running this whole thing, is in charge. Here's his number, get in touch with him. And so we had gotten in touch about showing up to that. But our first face-to-face meeting ever was at that 2015 rally. And then after that, I had encouraged, I was like, oh, you're awesome. Like, thanks for getting involved. Of course, again, we put the former Miss Arizona on stage behind the president.
Yeah.
With all of that. But so two things can kind of be true at the same time, which is I had mentioned that we had spoken before. Yeah, we had spoken before. We hadn't actually physically met. Our first time, I think, ever meeting was at that 2015 rally when she showed up and she was part of it and everything else. And it was like, wow, that was cool, because that changed the world at the time.
Yeah.
When we hosted that event, that became the first Trump rally ever that was ever hosted. And so anyone that was part of that, the cool part about this, which again, calling good things evil and evil things good, people calling this evil, which is kind of bizarre to me. It's like, Erica was literally part of the first Trump rally ever. That's how we met, which ultimately ended up with her meeting Charlie. And Charlie, and again, I've told this story a lot of times. I thought she was, way too big of a fish for Charlie to reel in at the time. I was like, because Charlie had not dated that many people. He had, and I was a little bit concerned because she's awesome. Like, she's like through and through. Again, just to speak to her capabilities, she's incredible. She's an incredible human being. We wanted to get her involved on our faith side because of that was her whole, that was where her heart was, focusing on the pastor recruitment, the pastor outreach, everything else that we had done at that time. And Charlie met her and was like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. I want to date her. And I was like, yo, dude, wait, like, don't mess this up. We want to hire her. And fortunately for them both, Charlie was able to close the deal and meet and spend time together and fall in love and get married and do things the right way. And then after getting married, move in together and have kids. And that's a beautiful story. And so people trying to make this into a thing where it's like, oh, this is like super questionable. It's like, actually, it's kind of pretty cool how it happened, which is that, the president's team, was the one that talked to the Miss Universe pageant contestants. I hosted that first event, invited her to get more involved. Turning Point. Charlie met her. It's a very beautiful thing, and I think it's pretty obnoxious and evil for people to try to suggest otherwise or say, oh, there's something questionable here, or she's a CIA agent. It's like, guys, this is so stupid. Like that is like such a disgusting betrayal of, again, Charlie's intellect. Going back to kind of what we talked about earlier here, is like Charlie loved Erica and Erica loved Charlie. They were one person, and their story is really cool. And I hate the fact that they have so much introspection to their life after Charlie's assassination, but it is what it is. And I hope that people will be a lot kinder to a widow and really be really grateful that she was like with the president from day one. You could argue she was more locked in with President Trump maybe before Charlie was. So it's like, they were there, and a great tag team and a duo, to support the president, and it's just very, very cool.
And from my understanding, both her and Charlie kind of have this Protestant evangelical background. One of the things that Candace has said, and I think this was October 29th when she first talked about this, is that secretly Charlie was converting to Catholicism, and that the place of burial was so hush-hush in the funeral because he actually had a Catholic burial ceremony at a Catholic cemetery. Is there anything you can offer on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into private matters, and there's so many private things that are around Charlie's burial that are intentionally private, because there's so many people who would like to disparage him and come to those sites and
I understand
that. And so I really can't talk a whole lot about that, but I can talk about his faith, which is Charlie was through and through evangelical his entire life. I mean, he literally spent every waking second, including at the event in Utah where Frank Turek was with him, with faith leaders in the evangelical community. That's all he did. That's he spent all, like, literally, that was his number one thing is, and he said this oftentimes, is his relationship with God, how he defended and spoke about Jesus to the public was the most important thing to him. And so that was his faith. I think he had a great admiration for other faiths, including ours, right?
Yeah.
Including the LDS faith. He said so just minutes before. He had great admiration for many elements of the Catholic faith. And no one has ever suggested otherwise. But I think it's actually pretty disingenuous, again, to truly not be as close to Charlie and to make suggestions about like the most important life choices that you could possibly make, whether it's around the love of his life or his faith. Those are you shouldn't speak ill about the dead. You shouldn't also put words into the mouth of those who have passed, that have gone on. And I wouldn't do that as one of the people that are closest to Charlie. I mean, I've probably hundreds of thousands of text messages with Charlie over the years. I would never even think about releasing one of those messages.
Don't be showing them. Don't be showing them.
Kind of like gain some kind of political point on the internet, which again, obviously is very appealing, I think, to many who had private conversations regularly with Charlie. But it's wrong. It's wrong to make suggestions or, to make again, just kind of like dunk on people because you want to win one like small little argument or make one point that is going to push some kind of narrative. That's just not right. Charlie deserves better than that. He was a great man of faith, and to try to characterize him as anything outside of his own words, I think is wrong.
Yeah. So that claim that he secretly, converted to Catholicism, you would say is kind of categorically false from everything that
it's cap.
Why would Frank Turk be next to him in like right near you, Brandon?
Yeah.
Why when that happened?
Yeah. 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 No, that was something.
Again, these are just like kind of the basic things. Where it's like, well, if you actually like start to like use common sense and start asking those questions, like these things kind of unravel real quickly. But again, it's, you can have admiration and love and care, especially and people, I think, also kind of don't really think about this. It's like Charlie was a major political figure, probably bigger than we even realized at the time of his death. And so he was, he had balanced a lot of different relationships of different types of people coming from lots of different backgrounds all the time. I mean, he was really good at that. The best at that. And so I don't think it's weird for people to be like, oh, wait, he had a lot of different relationships. Like, of course he had a lot of different relationships. I don't think that's weird at all to recognize those. I mean, I think he had a lot of people who were good friends coming from all different backgrounds that he trusted and liked and listened to. And I think that actually speaks to his character more, which is that you can be friends. He said this himself. He said this about Candace. And this is the way I feel, by the way. It's like Candace is, I don't know if I feel this way about myself anymore, but Candace is a good friend. Like we're good friends. You can disagree with people, have totally different opinions from people, and then also get along with them and figure it out. And I think Charlie felt that way about people of different faith backgrounds. I think he felt that way about different people that disagreed on lots of different things within the conservative movement. I think there's a lesson to be learned there that we can take away and say, hey, how can we be a little bit more like Charlie in that way? Well, it's definitely probably not going out and attacking the living daylights out of each other constantly. That's just not going to be the way that you do it. The way that you do it is you be an actual good friend. You identify when you disagree. You work on those things kind of in the background, and you focus on the things that are positive and kind of move forward in positivity. And I'll say this about Candace is Charlie believed in Candace through and through, that she was exactly what the conservative movement needed to help aggregate this attack on Black Americans, telling them that they had to think a certain way because Obama or Biden or whoever else told them to, or the DNC told them to. And she did a tremendous amount of effort to break that spell and give people the ability to free think. My concern today would be is like, are you focused on those things, giving people?
I gotta stop for a second, man. This dude is still, after all the things that Candace has said, he's still giving her her roses, her flowers. He's still being, you would not think that Candace had said some of the things that she said about this man, the way he's still speaking pop. I mean, that's going to have to go down, and that's going to go down in the annals of history. Because I'm sorry, I probably would have said, yeah, Charlie hated her. Charlie thought she was a low down, good for nothing. But this dude is still being ethical. Somebody said it right here in the chat. Like, the reason she doesn't like him is because he's ethical. And you know what? Tyler Bowyer is a better person than me, because I probably wouldn't have been this kind to her. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have been that kind. So shout out to him, because he's doing way better than me. Or I just wouldn't have been able to say it. I just wouldn't have been able to say it. So I just think that goes to show what kind of person he is. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep it dancing. Let's go.
People that opportunity, to think freely, or are you going down pathways that are not really aiding the activist movement that Charlie built? If there's one thing that we tell people, it's, you don't have to help Turning Point, but go out and build your own civic engagement activist arm, just the way that Charlie did, to help bring more people to truth and light and free thought and free speech. Those are things that are going to be very, very impactful. And again, you don't have to do it through Turning Point. Do your own thing. Like, go out and create your own thing. I think that's what we would encourage, or I think that's what Charlie would encourage, is to say, hey, you don't have to work with us. Go do your own thing, but help the movement, help the conservative movement, help the activist base, organize, because we're up against absolute vitriol and evil from the left. The communists that want to take over this country are, they're there. They exist, and so you have to fight it.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying about yours and Candace's relationship, like, I've heard you kind of speak on the Alex Clark show, how, back in the day, it was kind of, as in your terms, the three amigos. You guys were all there together, you, Charlie, and Candace, when she first met Kanye. And then now she portrays your guys' relationship in a very, very different light. Has she reached out to you personally at all? Like, if she reached out to you to come on her show and have this same type of conversation, like, is that something you would want to do? Or help me understand the current state of your guys' relationship.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, the last time I saw her, I think she's mentioned this, was a little bit more over a year ago. It was, I think 2024. I think was the last time she had spoken when everything. So I mean, everything was pretty much normal. I had a picture of her in my office up until just she started saying these kind of negative, a lot of these untrue things, and kind of attacking. So, like, I've never had, and I still really don't have anything negative to say about Candace. Obviously, I disagree with her on a lot, including the way that she feels about us. Just it's one of those things where it's like, you feel that way, but I've never had any negative feelings towards her. Mm-hmm. In fact, it just hasn't been a thing. And we, Turning Point USA, was able to pick up Blexit, and it's just been rebranded not that long ago to Rise, and has some incredible leaders, including Pierre, that's on the team that oversees that. Mm-hmm. There just hasn't really been any real negativity. Like, any negativity that's coming, it's like 100% from the other direction. Mm-hmm. And I don't really, to answer your question as succinctly as possible, I don't really know where that's coming from. I really don't get it at all, other than, feeling, there's some kind of feeling maybe that, she had some kind of more in-depth relationship with Turning Point, as again, former employee here or whatever, right? But, myself, like, I've never had anything negative. I was at her wedding, and she's been a friend. She's spoken at many of our things. Every time I've seen her, it's always been positive. And so it's kind of a little bit of a shock.
Yeah. And she hasn't reached out to you personally, like, at all?
No.
Okay, this is very telling. Shout out to anybody that's jumping into the best live chat. This is Tyler Bowyer. He was on a podcast this past week discussing pretty much all of the rumors put out about TPUSA, about himself, by Candace Owens. I kind of wish he had stayed on that wedding, though, because I want to know who else went to Candace's wedding. Because, my theory is Candace and Erica were never really friends. And I really don't believe. I think Charlie did go to Candace's wedding. I don't think Candace, I have not seen that Candace went to Charlie's wedding. Now, maybe somebody can find me that video or that picture. That's something different. I want to see evidence that Candace was at Charlie's wedding, but I digress. He's answering a lot of good questions. I do think one of the reasons why, in my opinion, why he's not really super defensive is because the more you try to defend yourself, the more fodder you give the fools. So he's just saying, hey, no, this is not true. And he moves on. This is not true. And he moves on. I think that's the right way to do it. If he went into the deep weeds, he's going to say something wrong. They're going to latch onto it. And that's going to be 22 more episodes. So I think he's doing the right thing. But shout out to everybody who's jumped in. I appreciate y'all. This is a little bit longer. Like I said, it's like almost 2 hours. Let's just call it 2 hours. Right. And I'm going to try to get I'm not going to keep stopping.
No,
like nothing.
Yeah, no, I haven't spoken to her at all. Since Charlie was assassinated. And again, she knows how close I am to Charlie. I think she's mentioned this, a bunch of text messages she has. She's blocked out my name on it, but it's me, her, and Charlie on the text message with those things. And so when she shared some of those personal messages that have been out there. And again, I have nothing negative to say about her at all. I just don't. I have, again, totally disagree with some of the positions that she's taken. I'm not focused on the Israel thing at all. Like that's not, my position. We didn't get into all of this, but I'm LDS. So, we have a core belief on the gathering Israel. That's kind of it's a faith driver. Served my mission in Russia. Saw a lot of really cool things that I think experiences that most people have never seen that I think relate to, the lost 10 tribes and spending time with that. And that changes your perspective a little bit. I think politically on Israel. So I totally disagree with some of those, that's at the forefront. That's the most important thing. I just think, yes, we should be careful about who we're funding. No, I don't think Israel is the greatest threat to America. I think there's many other threats that are far greater to us and to our society. But yeah, I have nothing negative to say about her outside of, I think we've been all kind of just shocked at how this has played out. But I can only imagine it has something to do with, again, things that she believes and other narratives that have been built that are just substantively false,
Yeah.
I know you liked that episode. This is actually a clip from a larger live stream. The link is down in the description, so you can go check it out. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you down there. Grace and peace.